You are the warrior of light, the savior of the universe, the single most important person in history. And so is the guy standing next to you cosplaying as Shrek. This makes things very weird because you're supposed to be the protagonist of the story, yet there are other players who are also going through the same predicament as you are, essentially taking you out of its immersion. Because, well, you're supposed to be the main guy, right? I know that old MMORPGs don't really have a focus on story, but if you stop for a bit and think about it, most of the successful ones do. World of Warcraft, Final Fantasy XIV, and Guild Wars 2 all have a focus on lore and world building, the first two even more. I know that Final Fantasy XIV addresses this in Shadowbringers, but I can't say much for other MMORPGs, and those who love world building and lore will definitely feel a little bit of disconnection to the game's story. This is very similar to games such as The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, where Zelda is fighting for her life in the castle and you're doing things like this. Now, there will come a point where players will start ignoring other players and continue the story like hundreds of thousands of players don't exist. In a game like Final Fantasy XIV, I just don't think that's possible at all. In your adventures, you'll surely have to deal with other players in dungeons provided that you're not using the trust system, forcing you to cooperate. At this point, players can simply forget that they're the sole main character of the story and accept that there are also other players doing the same thing as them. This can result in players losing their sense of importance, huge air quotations, because if there are millions of other people doing the same thing, why does this world need me doing the same thing? Which begs the question, are you guys really doing the same thing? The best way to think about this is that you're all working towards the same thing but in different ways. For example, a nurse and a doctor both work towards the patient's well-being. A nurse's duty is to care for the patient as they follow the doctor's orders. The doctor is there to assess the patient's condition and determine the correct way to treat them. Two vastly different jobs but the same goals. While they are both healthcare workers, their stories are not the same. The way they got their degree, the way one decided to further their studies, their paths diverged early but converged at a certain point. And believe it or not, that's very similar to what is happening in Final Fantasy XIV. Final Fantasy XIV isn't just its main scenario quest. It's a plethora of different mechanics working together to provide the best possible experience to the players. And its best mechanic allows players to be able to write their own stories in-game, which is role-playing. This is the aspect of the genre that allows you to write your own story, and Final Fantasy XIV excels in this through the addition of emotes, housing, a large variety of glamours, and last but certainly not least, a community that's into it. Role-playing in a community that's not open to it feels like you're a monkey trying to communicate with an alien. It's just not going to happen, and most likely, you're just gonna look dumb. But the Final Fantasy XIV community loves that shit. These endwalkers, killer of gods, conquerors of the ends of the world, turn into maid cafe waiters and waitresses at night. Some people also organize large parties server-wide, and with the introduction of data center hopping, players from other data centers can also come to such organized events. With that being said, this is where players can write their own stories parallel to what the game's lore wants them to do. They can be a popular maid cafe owner, a mentor who takes newbies to hard raids and guides them to victory, or a leader of a well-respected guild. But at the end of it all, we're all simply trying to save the world. Now I know a lot of you will argue that role-playing is literally in the MMORPG acronym, but I'm going to present the argument that no other game does role-playing like Final Fantasy XIV. The community in Final Fantasy XIV is probably one of its hooks. A lot of players are enticing non-FF14 players by saying that the community is quite probably the healthiest one around in all of gaming. And it's true. In my half-decade plus playing the game, I've never encountered a person who yelled at me when I messed up mechanics. Even when I was trying to get over my tank anxiety, everyone around me was supportive and understood that I was simply doing my best. Keep in mind that all these people came from the game's dungeon queue. What's also amazing is that they are also very sensitive when it comes to the game's story. They will try their best not to spoil you if the story is that important to you. Additionally, the quick chat allows players to communicate with each other despite having different languages. This game quite literally brings people together, and this type of community is very rare in games nowadays. Not only that, but there are also sub-communities. You want to be competitive? There are PvP teams and parties out there. Want to chill? Hop onto a free company that focuses on just casual gameplay. I've had my fair share of free companies and activities in Final Fantasy XIV. I handed out chocolates and limbs to La Minsa on Valentine's Day, participated in savage raids, and went to venues to socialize. Not a single time did I have a bad experience. Of course, it's all subjective, and I can definitely see how some of you might be thinking now that I've been paid by Square Enix to make this video. But I assure you, this is from the inside of a veteran MMO player who played Ragnarok Online, Noah's Tale, Dragonica, Pacifica, and a whole lot more. Final Fantasy is one of my favorite franchises and I consider 14 my home. It's a special game in my heart where I've met friends with whom I still stay in contact even after 5 years. This is one of the few games where people can create real relationships. Lots of people met in-game and got married in real life down the line. Stories like these are not uncommon, and this is where you just kinda have to accept that FF14 has left the realm of just being a video game and has become an experience. For a game to be an experience, it has to immerse you. And FF14 does this so well, you kinda just forget that it's not normally part of an MMO. Old school MMOs like Flife and Ragnarok Online mainly had players grind for levels, and that's pretty much it. Features like character emotes, housing systems, and marriage systems came at a much later time once players were starting to forge actual relationships in the games they were in. This in turn led to a longing to being able to mimic what people could do in real life. This evolved into things like being able to decorate your house as a venue for players to go take pictures of themselves or with their friends. You can also add the little bars that popped up where everyone is buying everyone drinks and sharing about their recent activities. While all of these are happening, you have to remember that you and they are all warriors of light called by Hadelin to fight for her. You are all doing the same thing, but that is not your sole purpose in this world. You can do much more. You can spread happiness by handing out sweets to strangers, talking to the new players around you and helping them navigate the vast world of Eorza, or go strike up a conversation with the person beside you and ask them if they're doing fine. The world is your oyster. This video has been long overdue. I've been playing Final Fantasy XIV for over half a decade now, and I've gone through major life events while I was locking in, trying to clear extreme trials back in Stormblood. While I consider myself not as hardcore as before, I still visit the game from time to time to do some dungeons, hang out with friends, and maybe even do some crafting or fishing. As I mentioned earlier, I don't think of Final Fantasy XIV as just a game, it's my home. This also means that whenever I'm feeling down, I have some sort of urge to play the game due to it being a surefire way of making me feel much better. Because just like an old friend of ours said, a smile better suits a hero.